My friend, if you have time to learn about one thing only before you try out FreeCAD on your computer, today I'm going to show you one thing you must learn before you try out FreeCAD. So you have installed the software and you have opened it up. It shows the start screen. You don't need that start screen. Control New will open up a new file. The first file you create by create new from this create new Control N. It shows like this. So in here, if you see on this screen, it says it's under part design. Now, if this one doesn't look like on your computer, let's make it look like that. Go to edit and go to preferences. Under there, we want to go to workbenches, and all the way to the bottom here, it says workbench selector type. Select tab bar. If it is combo box, go ahead with tab bar. It's much easier on the tab bar. So now that you have this setup in here, you may have to relocate few things here and there. But the point is it comes default as part design, and then there is another workbench in part. So it has been a long discussion in the FreeCAD community, which one you should start first, like which one you should work in, part or part design. And that's the one thing that you need to learn about before you give your first trial on FreeCAD. You must decide which workbench you are going to stick with. There is a wiki page where there is a detailed description on what are the differences between part and part design. But the idea is you'll have to decide which workbench you are going to work in. None of those workbenches are deficient in their capability. They will produce the same product for you, maybe in a different route. Although the FreeCAD the software installs makes part design as your default workbench, it's not saying that you must start work in part design. But if you do, it comes with some restrictions per se, some specific rules and regulations. Compared to if you start working part, it comes with some other set of restrictions. So let's give it a try. Part design, the first thing you'll have to do is create a body. So on this model and task, in the model, there is a tree will show up as you work on your model, and task is specific task under one button. So in part design, by default, my first task is to create a body, right? So the body comes up here. I want to rename that body as our, say, working part, right? Now, as you can see, this is highlighted, bold. You can double click on it. The highlight goes away. It becomes like a regular unbold part. For you to work in part design, you will have to have a part, this body, right? And then the body will have to be activated all the time. You cannot work in part design without having an active body in this tree view. So to activate one part, one body, double click on it, it will activate this, or right click on it and then say select active body. So that's the first rule of part design. You will have to have a body that is active. Then you can start sketching, go about your day, do all the stuff that you need to do in that body. So there is our first sketch. We draw a slot, and then I can make a pad that will pad it, right? Very simple. Compare that with part workbench. So let's open up another file, Control N. Now we want to work in part. In part workbench, you do not have to have an active body. Anything that created by each step in part, it is itself its body. It doesn't have to be activated or deactivated. So in part, you don't have to create an active body right there. You just directly jump into sketching. So we want to draw a sketch on XY plane, and then say draw a slot there. So the sketch is there. Compare that with the previous part design. In part design, the first sketch was under working part, that active container that we created. In part, the sketch is sitting right under this file name. Right, now let's go ahead and try to pad it. Well, that's another difference, but in part design, the extrusion is called pad, right? In part, that is called, all right, extrude. So two different names, but it does exactly the same thing. It will provide a 3D shape to a 2D sketch. So select this sketch and extrude it for 10 millimeter. There. So the same thing done in part and part design. The part design will always have to have an active body in there. Part doesn't need an active body. It creates that body itself. So that's the first difference between part and part design. Second difference is, let's say I want to build a pole on top of this surface. On top of this pad, we want to build a circular pillar, say. So I want to select this surface. Now make sure that this container, this active, the body is active, right? Let's switch over to part design, right? And then select the surface and draw a sketch on that. So now I can draw a sketch on top of that in the middle, right? And now that sketch is stuck to that surface, which is very simple. Now that sketch is showing up right under this pad, but still under the container. So select this sketch, extrude that for say 100 millimeter. So that is our pole. We created that, very simple. You see, when we created this pad, it is still another pad. The previous pad is grayed out, which means it is hidden now. So if I want to make it that visible, so select that and hit space on your keyboard. That pad is right there at the bottom, but once I make that visible, the next part goes away. So if I want to make that visible, the previous part goes away, because by inherent design of part design workbench, it is cumulatively building up your model. So this pad now is embedded with the next pad that we build. So when you select this, it's actually representing the whole construction. This working part is both of these pad added together by default. You do not have to take these two parts separately and put them together. You don't have to do that in part design. So that's the benefit of part design. Its succession, those successive steps are added together or like subtracted together by default. So now this pad, the previous pad is there, it's in the tree. The next pad is called, you can see this arrow, downward arrow, the white downward arrow with green background. That is indicating the tip. That's the tip of the body. By default, the tip of the body is at the end step. And when you work on this whole body, you select the whole thing, and that's this whole body. So let's do the same thing in the part workbench. So we move over to part, and in here we do the same thing. Select this surface, and it has its own create sketch button in part workbench. So create sketch, and then it says, do you want to attach it to this plane face? I want to say yes. Part design did not ask me about that because it was expecting that. Part says, are you sure? I say yes. Okay. Now we do the same thing. We draw a circular sketch in the middle and then hit close. So that's our sketch. It is sitting right below this extrude, but it's not part of the extrude. This sketch is independent of the extrude. Well, it is mapped on that same surface, but they are not still connected together. I want to extrude that for 100 millimeter, right? Now if you'll see, both of these in the tree are visible. They are their own part. I can make them visible individually, so they are independent of each other. Well, not this sketch though. It is connected with the previous surface, so there is a relation there. But you could make it independent. Say, if you want to draw another sketch on XY plane, and say somewhere here, and then extrude that for say 110. So now there is another part shows up. Those are independent of each other. They are not connected. Part workbench does not do the Boolean by itself. You will specifically have to tell the part workbench, I want to put these together, these two parts. So I want to say, I want to select this one and hit Control on your keyboard and then select left click to select the other part. And I want to tell the part workbench, say, I want to put these two together as a fusion. So you go over in this toolbar where it says union, select that button, and now this is the whole thing. The fusion is the whole thing put together. The bottom line is part design will do the Boolean for you by default. Part workbench will not do the Boolean by default. So part workbench is a little longer workflow compared to part design. So let's make a whole through this pad, see how that's also another Boolean operation, but subtractive Boolean operation. Let's see how that handled by both workbenches. So I want to select this surface, draw another sketch, say I want to make a rectangular hole at this end. So there is my hole that I want to make. So what I do is I want to select that sketch that I just created and then come over to the toolbar list and then say pocket. Now there is another one is hole. Don't go over there for now. Pocket is what is the subtractive Boolean operation in part design. So I want to make a pocket, and you can see it is pocketing downward. So it says length is 5 mm by default, but if you want to go it all the way through, right, what you do is you want to go to type and say through all, and there is my subtractive Boolean operation shows up by default. So when I say pad, it is additive pad. When I say pocket, it is subtractive pocket operation. So that's the part design. It will do your addition subtraction by default. So the red colors are the subtractive operations. The yellow colors are the one with additive Boolean operations. In part workbench, if we wanted to do the same thing on here, we want to make a rectangular hole. So we do the same, select the surface, draw a sketch, hit OK, and then make that rectangular hole there. And now I want to extrude. So there is no pocket operation. There is no red subtractive operation in here. So what I'll have to do, I'll have to make it manually. I want to extrude that, and I don't know how much is this much for now. So what I can do is I can go to along it. I can take it, I can do it like, the old way. So I can make it 20 mm and make it reversed. So it will go down and hit apply, close. So there is my part that I want to cut out. Select the fusion. That's the first part that we want to keep, and select the extrude, the second part that we want to delete. The sequence is important. Fusion first, and then extrude is second, or you can select it from here too, right? And then come here and say cut. So you can cut that. That manual cut is part design does that automatically. Part you get to choose, and under this cut you can have all of those components in there, so you can actually go in there and then edit those. So this is true for both part and part design. So the point is both workbenches is creating parametric parts, but in different way. Sometimes it comes in handy to be able to select different parts and put them together manually. Sometimes people prefer, most of the times people prefer these automatic Boolean operations. And also part design has some other tools that part workbench does not have. So part design, you can do a wide variety of tasks staying within part design, whereas part workbench, it has like most of the tools, like basic tools in their Boolean operations, but you see all other workbenches, almost all of them except part design. Well, there are some ways, but all of those workbenches work well with part workbench. Part design, though, it tries to use, so it's like, part design is kind of like a self-sufficient workbench. It can do a wide variety of work within itself. It does not handle other workbenches very well. There are ways to handle, like, be collaborative with other workbenches when it comes to part design, but it's not its own, like, its strength. So part design is not so much collaborative with other workbenches, but part workbench, collaboration with other workbenches is its strength. So there it is. That's your one thing that you need to learn about FreeCAD before you try it out. Always, if you are a beginner in this 3D modeling with FreeCAD, always pick one. Just make your mind on either part or part design, and then get proficient on that. Work on that, like to have a deep knowledge on that, and then try another workbench. What it is recommended, it is not recommended to mix them up as a beginner. Once you know what are the strengths and what are the not strengths of these two workbenches, you can mix them up. You can use both workbenches at their strength and then make your life easier. But until you know the caveats, they say, until you know the caveats of its mixing these things up, don't mix part or part design. Just pick one, stick to that until you know all about it, and then pick another one. Just know that both of these workbenches, they have their own strengths, and sometimes something part design cannot do, only part can do. Sometimes part design can do things in a better way. So that's a quick introduction of part design and part. Obviously, there are more to it, but there will be more videos in future on this series. But for now, pick one and work on that. Welcome to the FreeCAD community. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any question, comment, or suggestion on this model, let me know in the comment section below. I'll see you in one of my next videos then.